Hey, Mom. What does defamation mean?
Defamation? Why, that means, well, that depends. How does it read?
$50,000 defamation lawsuit.
Oh, that. Well, that means, well, somebody is suing somebody else because they thought they'd been defamed.
But what does it mean?
Well, it's hard to explain. But I'm terribly busy, dear. Why don't you go ask Grandpa?
Grandpa? What does defamation mean?
Defamation? Huh. You mean defamation of character?
I don't know. It's right there in the paper. What does it mean, Grandpa?
Wait till I get through reading it. Defamation of character means... Oh. Hello there. Well, this is what brought up Freddie's question. Somebody in Royaltown is starting a $50,000 lawsuit for slander, malicious gossip, and defamation of character. You know, I wonder why it is that some folks never seem to realize that gossiping is like playing with dynamite. It always starts with an idle bit of talk. One case I remember had to do with a mink coat. And I guess as a gossip getter, you just can't beat mink. There. That'll be 50 cents.
Here you are.
Thanks. And drop in again.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Smitty.
Bye, Miss Holloway.
Holloway. Hey, Smitty, did you get a load of that mink?
Yeah, looks swell, don't it?
Must have cost a small fortune. Wouldn't you say, Grandpa?
Huh? Oh, I wasn't following you, Wally.
Why, that coat of Grace Holloway's. I'll bet you couldn't touch that for a penny under $3,000.
I wouldn't know. I never priced one. Looks nice on her, though.
Business must be plenty good for her husband. Yes, sir.
Get me a cup of coffee, will you, Smitty?
Fella's got to have a terrific turnover these days. Come out with $3,000 after taxes. Can you imagine? You know, the way I figured, in his kind of business, he had to do a gross of at least $25,000 netting up for that coat. That's a lot of business in a town like this. What do you make of it?
I don't make anything of it.
Beats me how he does it. Well,
thanks, Wally.
so long, boys.
Goodbye, Mr. Briggs.
Drop in again. You know, I've got a notion not to buy that new fishing reel I was talking about.
Why not?
Well, according to Wally's way of figuring, we'd have to do about $250 worth of business here to net the $30 that fishing reel would cost. And that's a lot of money just to catch a few fish.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Fellas got to figure real close these days.
Yep. Too bad. It was a swell reel.
We're talking about Grace Holloway's new fur coat. By the way, have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it yet, Jane.
It's genuine made. She must have gotten it on her trip to New York.
And frankly, I didn't even know she'd been away.
Oh, but she has. And that coat couldn't have cost a penny under $5,000.
Oh?
Well, don't you think it's overdoing things a little? I mean, such an obvious extravagance.
Well, not if you can afford it.
Her husband sure must have hit a gold mine. Wally Briggs was telling us about it the other night. He had all the figures.
Oh, I'm sure he did.
Now, don't breathe a word to anybody, but there's something very funny about the whole thing, if you know what I mean.
All right, Jane. Goodbye.
Anna, have you any idea what happened to the glue?
Oh, I think Freddie was using it yesterday. I'll look in his room.
Something wrong?
No. No. You know, I just can't understand why people have to gossip so.
They don't have to, my dear. They just like to.
Well, everybody in town's talking about Grace Holloway and her $5,000 mink coat.
5,000, huh? That coat is getting more valuable every day. You know, it's gone up a couple of $1,000s since I first heard about it. And at that rate, it'll be worth a king's ransom in no time.
What do you mean?
Well, things have a habit of getting out of hand when you women folks start chatting on the phone.
Oh, you're so right, Grandpa. It was Mrs. Briggs who mentioned it to you and Smithy the other day, wasn't it?
About that glue. You say it's up in Freddie's room? I'll get it.
If we leave now, I can see Richardson before his office closes. Then we can stay in Royal Town for dinner and a show.
I'd love it.
Jack Holloway speaking. Oh, yes, Mr. Fowler. Yes, that's absolutely rock bottom. Oh, I see. You say they won't reconsider? Oh, that's too bad. Well, perhaps later, then. Okay, and thanks for calling. The Fowler people have turned down my bid.
And you were counting on it.
I thought it was practically set. Now they offer me terms that would bankrupt me. Well, it's nothing for you to worry about, honey. Now, let's get going. I'm going to show those people in Royal Town the prettiest girl they've ever seen.
Going to be in town long, Mr. Knox?
Well, just a few days, unless I run into complications.
I heard you people might open an office here next year.
Well, not permanently. We may have a deputy in the post office for a few weeks to help people with their returns.
Well, that would be mighty handy for a lot of folks.
Yes. Well, it's worked out very well wherever we've tried it.
I imagine it has. We'll certainly appreciate it here.
Well, nice seeing you again, Mr. Fisher. Goodbye.
Goodbye, and drop in again.
I'll do that.
Looks like trouble for someone, eh, Grandpa?
Trouble?
This fellow's an income tax man, isn't he?
Yes.
Well, I'm sure he didn't come to Middleburg for his health. Give you any clues? Mention any names?
Of course not. His work is confidential.
Did you hear what he said about running into complications? Sounds like he's expecting trouble. I wonder whose hide he's after. Well, I tell you, I heard him myself, Jerry. Yeah. I wonder who he's after. Well, how about meet me for lunch and I'll tell you all about it. Bye.
Hi, hello.
Hello, Graham.
Hello, Wally. How are you?
Very good. Smitty, give me a cup of coffee and a donut, please. Yeah, well, it just goes to show. Well, you never can tell. Why, the mink coat, of course. How else could he afford it? Well, keep it under your hat, Gene. He's a good guy. I wouldn't do anything to hurt him. Yeah, bye.
I wouldn't mention it, except that it's all over town. But Jack Holloway's in plenty of hot water with the government.
Well, this is just between us, Harry. Well, figure it out for yourself. Well, sure, I'm right. I hate to rush you, Harry, but I got some other calls to make. See you later. Bye.
Really, Jane, I'd rather not discuss it.
Well, of course, I'd hate to see it happen, but I understand it's so bad it's even hurting his business.
I'm sorry, Jane. I really must go. Some pies in the oven. Goodbye.
Calhoun speaking. Yes. Yes, I certainly shall. Thank you. Goodbye.
As I was saying, it's almost the identical setup we had last year. 3 notes maturing in 30, 60, and 90 days.
I was hoping you wouldn't find it necessary to apply for a loan this year.
Business hasn't been quite that good.
Conditions have changed.
Hold on a minute. You're not suggesting that
Credit's tightened up everywhere.
Oh, but my situation's actually improved. As a matter of fact, I've never been in better shape in my life.
Jack, there's no use in my beating about the bush. Frankly, I doubt if our loan committee would consider your application favorably right now.
Well, this is ridiculous. You've financed my new inventories for years. And have I ever failed to meet a note right on the dot?
I know, but... Well, confound it, Jack, with all this talk about you being in a mess with the government.
Are you trying to tell me that you're refusing me a loan because I've had a few huddles with a treasury man?
It isn't a refusal. Exactly.
I didn't realize that this ugly gossip had gone so far. Did it ever occur to you that perhaps I don't owe the government a cent? The fact is, the Treasury Department sent a man down here to check on my claims for refunds. And now, because some busybodies happen to see him in my office, everybody suspects the worst. Instead of a tax liability, I have a potential asset.
Well, I must say, this changes the entire picture. But you'll have to admit it looked odd. However, in view of what you've told me, I'll submit your application immediately. I'll get in touch with you the minute I hear from the loan committee.
Thanks. Let's hope they haven't spent too much time leaning over their back fences. Goodbye, Mr. Calhoun.
Goodbye, Jack.
It's awfully nice of you to ask us, Charlotte. I'm afraid it's out of the question tonight. Perhaps next week when Jack isn't quite so busy. Fine. Good night, dear.
Oh, thanks, honey.
How much more do you have to do?
Oh, another hour. Gotta get this breakdown for the income tax department. Knox is leaving tomorrow.
How does it look?
Pretty good. That's just a hunch, of course. He doesn't talk much. I wish more people were like him.
I know just what you mean.
Be anything else, Pastor?
No, I think that's all, Smitty.
All right, sir.
Well, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. No, sirree.
What makes you say that?
I'm not saying you did it on purpose or deliberately, but I'd think twice before trying to get away with anything like that.
Anything like what, Wally?
Well, you mean you haven't heard about his trouble with the government? Everybody's talking about it.
Well, not everybody. The fact that some of us heard the rumors doesn't necessarily mean that we helped spread them. I can't understand why people tear a man's reputation to pieces without a shred of evidence.
Well, there's plenty of evidence. What's that tax fellow doing in his office all the time? And what about that coat of his wife's? Just a case of putting two and two together.
And getting 5.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you, Smitty. Goodbye.
Oh, I suppose it's only human to do a little bit of gossiping now and then. But most of us don't seem to know the difference between gossip and conversation. Wally, whenever I'm in doubt, I always remember something that my father told me many years ago. If there's any chance of it hurting somebody, don't say it. There'd be a lot more happiness in the world if people followed that simple rule.
Well, now, look, Grandpa, don't get me wrong. Nobody wants to hurt Jack. Me least of all. He's a great guy. We're neighbors.
Then as Christians, we should treat him as a neighbor and refuse to believe anything but good about him.
And I suppose when something like this comes along, we should look the other way? Don't talk about it? Ignore it altogether?
That would be a step in the right direction. But it would be even better if people would look for the best instead of the worst. Fisher Drugstore? Yes, ma'am. Oh, just a moment, please. There you are, Wally. I hope it relieves your throat.
Thanks, Grandpa.
No, if you'll give me the prescription number, I'll be glad to look it up for you. Yes?
Believe me, Jack, I did everything I could, but my hands were tied. The committee tabled it until their next meeting.
Apparently, they hang around back fences after all.
Nothing of the sort. Your application wasn't turned down, merely deferred. What I mean is, let's not jump at conclusions.
It might be a good idea to spread that line around town about jumping at conclusions.
Darling, there's no point in getting upset. It should all be straightened out in a few days.
Right now, I'd like to forget the bank, the business, this town, and everything connected with it.
Is it that bad?
Oh, it's sickening. Everything we worked for through the years threatened because a few busybodies couldn't keep their mouths shut.
Who are they, Jack?
That's the maddening part about it. You can't pin them down. If you could, you might take some action. When you ask your friends, they play dumb. Tell they're lying to you by the way they look. The phony sympathy written all over their faces.
I know. I've met a few of them myself.
I'd like to throw our things in the car and shake this town's dust off for good.
But then everyone would think you really were guilty.
Who cares what they think?
I care, darling. We've got to stay.
I guess you're right. We'll just have to mark time until the bank committee decides to make up their mind.
Regardless of what happens, we'll make out all right.
Good evening, Anna.
Hello, Grandpa.
How's everything?
Oh, all right. Got a long-distance call from Carl a few minutes ago.
Well, that's good. What do you have to say?
He'll be home Thursday.
Oh, you sound as you'd rather he didn't come home so soon.
Oh, Grandpa, you know that isn't so.
Well?
Well, it's just that
Just that what?
I've been thinking about the Halloways. And every time I do, I just get so upset.
Oh?
I ran into Grace today. She told me they may have to sell their business, their home, everything, and leave Middleburg for good.
No.
And all because of this terrible gossip that's been going on. Imagine being driven from your work and home.
I didn't realize it had gone that far. Oh, I've seen it happen before. Nobody means any harm, but they keep on talking until they drive some innocent soul to distraction or worse.
Doesn't seem right to just sit by and watch your neighbors being treated that way. There ought to be some way to stop it.
Anna, I believe there is a way.
It was good of you to stop by, Pastor Martin. Talking things over helps a lot sometimes.
Yes, it does. Our little conversation helped me to understand a lot of things.
I do appreciate it. Thanks again.
Not at all. Goodbye.
Bye.
Wally, you can't escape the fact that you're partly responsible for bringing unhappiness to one of your fellow men.
But, Pastor, I didn't mean...
No, I'm not saying it was deliberate. It seldom is. I think I've known you long enough to be aware that you wouldn't intentionally violate one of God's commandments.
God's commandments? Why, of course not.
Neither would any other sincere Christian. But many of them do, every day of their lives, just as you did when you became part of the whispering campaign against Jack Holloway.
It wasn't against him, Pastor. You make it sound like something malicious.
How do you think it sounded to Jack Holloway?
But, Pastor, you don't understand. Honestly, if I'd have thought...
If you'd thought of God's commandment, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor.
But, Pastor, I...
And if you'd thought of the love that a Christian is supposed to have in his heart for his neighbor, I don't think you'd have gotten any enjoyment out of spreading that ugly rumor. Remember, charity thinketh no evil, but rejoiceth in the truth.
Grandpa was right. I put 2 and 2 together and got 5. I sure made a mess out of things, didn't I? You think it'd do any good if I went over and had a little talk with Jack?
It would, Wally, it would. But before you do, might I suggest that you have a little talk with God? Ask him for his forgiveness in the Savior's name. And ask him for the power to overcome the sin of gossip. Goodbye, Wally.
Bye, Pastor.
And so Wally did have that talk with Jack Holloway. And fortunately, everything turned out all right. Not only for the Holloways, but also for poor Wally, who did feel mighty bad about what he'd done. And that's why I hate to read about these defamation suits. They would never come up at all if all of us would be just as charitable in our thinking and speaking, as Christ would have us be.